Welcome to The Founder Factor, where we'll take you behind the scenes with some of South Carolina's most impactful entrepreneurs to tell you about some of the strategies, ideas, and mindsets that might help unlock your next business breakthrough. Today on the show, we are joined by Scott Millwood, who is an entrepreneur who has done many different projects in his life, and he's involved in just the more general entrepreneurial ecosystem in Greenville as well. So welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, let's do a brief run through for our audience on all the amazing stuff you've done around town. I guess to just quickly run through it. So you were on the founding team of DataStream.
I was on the team at DataStream, not a founder, but
Okay,
on the team
at
executive
DataStream.
leadership through that great run.
Okay, which I know that a lot of Greenville residents know that as a huge success story. And then Customer Effective, you were one of the founders there, and I know you helped with the sale to Hitachi. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Gosh,
Founded that with a friend of mine from DataStream, Michael Elliott, and we grew that over 10 years and exited to Hitachi in 2014.
Oh my gosh, that's wild, selling to a company as big as Hitachi.
It was wild for us too. Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then Yesflow is your current business, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and both in the CRM space?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. So we kind of built off of what we'd done with Customer Effective in CRM and started Yesflow to add AI and natural language into the ability to connect to CRM and other enterprise systems.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. And then the last thing, well, not the last thing, I know the list is ever evolving, but you were still very involved in Next.
Right. Had the opportunity to help found that back in 2006, and I'm current board chair.
Yeah.
And
so you've really
still deeply involved in that. Yeah.
So you've really seen all sides of the entrepreneurial spectrum, so to speak.
I guess you could say so. Yeah. Everything from the 38th largest company in the world with Hitachi to a 2-person startup with Customer Effective.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
What was what was your first company?
Wow. So that takes me way back.
Yeah, beyond any of these?
Yeah. I mean, the first time I really got a taste for anything as a founder was actually starting a club in high school to host parties.
Oh my gosh.
So we had a thing called ITK, and it was grown out of a consumer need to have band parties. And so we started collecting money from lots of different people and put together a little organization. We recruited 40 people and had essentially a pyramid scheme of bringing people together illegally, I might add, to have these massive band parties in high school, and that was our first founding.
That's hilarious! Oh my gosh, what a clever idea!
Yeah.
So it sounds like you always had a little bit of the itch to do something like
always
this.
been from having a bunch of cutting grass experience and having a company like that in high school to do the just going out and collecting gas and pulling around and cutting grass for people.
Right.
But really, I think, my experience in truly founding a legit enterprise, if you will, was sprang out of DataStream. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, I was with a company called Harbinger in Atlanta that was also a startup, under $1 million in revenue when I got there, and had seen really smart founders who had the right mix of technical and business acumen to grow significant businesses. Both those went public. And I had the opportunity to be on the team and be part of that through over 10 years. So 4 with Harbinger and nearly 9 with DataStream.
Yeah.
And got to see it firsthand and realized that when we were looking to sell DataStream, that I didn't want to be part of the next thing that was going to be whatever it was that was acquired. So I went to Larry Blackwell, our founder, and said, hey, I want to start my own. And he was super supportive of that. I had an inkling of what I wanted to do then, started doing some research on it and figured out that there was a real opportunity in the market for consulting services around Microsoft CRM. And I knew the time was right. For me personally, it was a great moment for taking the risk. And so I launched with, no real customers and no capital.
So how did you loop in Michael?
Well, it wasn't actually very subtle. I had just gone down to Savannah and had landed a contract with a company called Go Software, which was be our first customer. And on the way back, I called Michael and was like, hey, I've landed a customer and now we have to deliver. So I really, really need you to come join me.
Wow.
And of course, we had some prior discussions to it, but he literally within a couple of days resigned and was on board within a couple of weeks. And we were camped out in Savannah for the next 7 months delivering our first project and our reference customer.
Yeah, tell me about that experience, your first customer.
You know, that it was kind of an all-in experience. We had one customer, and we knew we had to absolutely have just a resounding success. The product from Microsoft at the time was in version 1, so, you know, buggy. We just gave ourselves every opportunity to have success by living down there and becoming great friends with the whole sales and service team. We spent, you know, many, many sleepless nights configuring and customizing and integrating and converting data and all the things that we needed to make it successful. And eventually we were allowed to actually go home and come back and forth a little bit. But we had a great success and a flagship customer that went on to get some awards from Microsoft and be on stage at one of their 10,000 person conferences where they got this Pinnacle Award. So they got their reward and we got ours as well.
Very cool.
But, one of those all-in experiences where you just know this one has to work.
Right.
You don't get a whole lot of second opportunities.
Yeah, no, great point.
Yeah.
How can you explain how customer effective relates to Yesflow in terms of? I know you said that Yesflow was kind of piggybacked off.
Yeah, absolutely. So customer effective, we started as a consulting firm on top of Microsoft Dynamics CRM, and what we saw after we exited. And actually before we exited, but towards the latter years of customer effective when we were transitioning to Hitachi, we saw a lot of our large customers who would implement Dynamics CRM, but then they had trouble getting the field to actually use it. So that adoption issue. So we went away for a little while, had some time away from the business. And in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, couldn't it be easier? Shouldn't getting data out of your system be easier? Getting data back into your system can definitely be easier. So we started working around with AI. We started looking at natural language understanding and automated speech speech recognition technologies like Alexa and Siri and that sort of thing, and figured out that you could connect those two together. So Yesflow is an outgrowth of that. We're just trying to make getting data from enterprise systems and getting data back into those systems easy, and doing that through language. And we initially thought, well, that's just all voice. I'm going to talk to my watch. I'm going to ask for something. It's going to pop up. I'm going to leave a meeting. I'm going to push a button, record a note. As it turns out, through trial and error and prototyping and the like, we figured out that users actually want to touch, talk, and text. So we ended up building our application to be all of those things, really multimodal. And that has made a difference. People don't always think, I'm just going to talk now. What they're doing is they're interacting with that form factor, and they're talking a little bit, then they might touch a little bit, then they might text a little bit, then they might go back to talking a little bit. So that's how we ended up with what we're doing, is just following, really pulling the thread of user adoption and trying to solve that user adoption.
Okay. That's neat, thinking about it as pulling the thread. I like that. So how has your mindset about running a business, founding a business changed throughout the course of all of these different sub-journeys we've talked about?
I think the early days, if we talk about something as silly as high school, right? It was just an opportunity. I saw something that could be done. It sounded fun. We did it, right? Later on, I think after I had some experience with Harbinger and seeing smart guys there and DataStream and being deeply involved in that, from 10 million in revenue to 120 million in revenue and 1,000 employees and an IPO and multiple acquisitions, I felt confident that I could go do something on my own. But I also just knew that I had a fire inside me that if I didn't go try, I would later on have regret. And so as a founder, it was really something that I felt like I really didn't have that much control over it. I had to go do this. This was how to define myself in a lot of ways. Just I got to go do this. There's no ifs, ands, and buts. And so that's sort of the, burn the boats moment, if you will. Like, okay, I got 2 small kids and, blah, 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 commitments here and there, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Right.
This is what's got to happen. Got to do it. Yeah.
You said something interesting there, which is that it defined you.
Right.
How do you think about your work now as it relates to your personal life and sense of self? And how does I think
listen,
people talk about work-life balance, and it's not
financial
always that simple.
comfort can go a long way to changing your definition.
Well said.
And so having an exit or 2 is really helpful in that regard, because you then get a little bit different perspective than, hey, I have to do X to get Y. Right. I think part of my involvement with Next as a founder was just bringing entrepreneurs in the community together, right? Just having that conversation and learning from one another. And later on, as I've spent the last 3+ years as board chair, it's really much more about giving back and much more about creating the right environment that other founders feel comfortable taking the leap and having the right tools and community support to be successful, right? When we did it early on, there was very little. There wasn't. Next was born out of need because we're founding customer effective, and like looking around going, who else is like us here, and how do we get together with them? And you just couldn't find them. What resources do we have available to us? They're everywhere, but you can't get your hands on them very easily. So that was born from our own frustration. The giving back part in the most recent past 3 or 4 years has been more of seeing the right opportunity to add some gas onto a spark and build a big fire around this thing. We have a great community. We've got a lot of people that have great ideas. We don't have it all pieced together just yet, but that's why you wake up every day and continue to work on Next to make it the right connecting point for founders and entrepreneurs trying to grow and scale their businesses.
I'm curious, what's been the biggest fallacy you've seen in terms of the founders you've interacted with? The Next network, or just mindset that you recommend shifting.
A couple of things. 2 things really. One, a lot of people have this idea that being an entrepreneur and a founder is sexy, and they just want to do that. You're either cut out for it or you're not. And I think this, there's a lot of sort of making entrepreneurs on a pedestal is a little bit false in that. People are either going to find that path and be successful with it, or they're going to quickly figure out that they're just kind of pretending to do that and they don't have the stomach for it. Because it is, I like to say, entrepreneurs are delusional optimists. You have to have this sort of delusion that you're going to be successful even when all the factors are against you, And then I think the other part of that is that, a lot of times you see, a moment in time where a company can go one way or another. And if you don't have that kind of will to survive that's born out of this is how I'm going to define myself, you'll just wither up. You'll just kind of go away. And that happens in the first 6 to 12 months of a lot of companies.
Is that speaking from personal experience?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about that moment for you.
So, I think early on, we were working at a large bank, and this is 2008, and the financial crisis hit, and this customer effective. And our customer, this was like catastrophic market decline, 30%, 40%, not unlike right now.
Yeah.
And we thought, well, gee, our business could just die. We could just go to zero here. And so we're really thinking through, plan B, plan C. What are we going to do? How do we do this? And we were small. So we decided at the moment, let's go talk to all of our customers. Let's go see everybody that we're doing business with. And we got a lot of confidence from that, from just hearing that they liked what we were doing. They weren't pulling the reins in. In fact, a couple of them said, Nucor Steel, one of our biggest, said, no, we see this as an opportunity to double down. We want to be coming out of this downturn in better position.
Yeah.
So we said, instead of slowing down ourselves and curtailing our hiring, we doubled down. We had a customer conference in Greenville and brought all of our customers in, which at the time was probably 30 customers. They all came. We gave them tons of opportunity for education. We showed them what we were up to. We shared stories between customers so they could see what each other were doing. They formed bonds and relationships with each other, and it became a little bit of a thing. So we started doing that in 2009, and we continued it until today. I mean, Hitachi is still running the customer conference with a couple thousand people now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. What an accomplishment.
Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
we turned, what looked like it was going to be lemons, we ended up turning into lemonade.
Yeah. And it sounds like creating a community out of the services too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm also curious, what has been the biggest mindset shift that you've had? Looking back at when you first started founding businesses and now the perspective you bring to Next and the perspective you bring to Yesflow, like what's the biggest change?
I think the biggest thing is, I used to think that it was the idea.
Yeah.
Right. It was this, you have to have this spark, this wonderful idea. You've got to have the next Google algorithm for success to happen. And the truth is, no, it's about execution. Great execution is much, much more important than a great idea. And the execution in our kind of business is all about people. And so the fabric of your company and the culture is so much more important than what you do. It's how you do it. And for a lot of that, it's the why. Getting at that cultural imperative of why do these people show up and give their blood, sweat, and tears every day to serve those customers. And I think that realization, it took me much longer than it should have, quite honestly, to realize that the people are the company. And when you get down to that point, you can have great success. And those people, of course, have to serve the customer, which is the most important part. But if you don't have those right people serving those right customers, you don't really have a company.
How have you thought about that in terms of building your team at Yesflow?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, we had a startup on this thing in 2019 and got to product, MVP, shortly thereafter. We built real product in 2020, and then we had real customers quickly after that. So I pulled some people from Yesflow or into Yesflow from Customer Effective and from DataStream, kind of a long lineage of the same team, right? The thread. Yeah, it was all this team, this stable of people that were trustworthy and capable that I'd worked with for years and years. So we had the right mix there. What happened to us, once we had these couple of Fortune 1000 customers giving us great feedback is, boom, we got hit with the pandemic. And so everything that we knew changed, right? Everybody went home. They're working from their basement. Customers are all scrambling to do different things. They're trying to figure out how to make Zoom work and Teams work and how to support their people from home. Yeah. So the primary use case for Yesflow of people on mobile devices traveling, planes, trains, and automobiles, looking up information from the field, recording information back, that all shifted like 180 degrees on us. And our team changed. So we've had to kind of, zig and zag a little bit on that to figure out where's our best opportunity. What are the customers telling us about what they like, don't like? How are they using it? How are they not using it? Which is just as important, is what are they not doing that we thought they would do, right? And just observing that and listening really, really well.
So I know you're a big fan of prototypes. Tell me a little bit about how you use
prototypes.
So
shameless plug for Designly is we I was mentoring with Josh and Keith through Next and saw some of that work that was going on there, and just at the right time, we started down the path of building out our prototypes. And to build an AI app like we've done is very intense, very time consuming, very expensive. We needed to put it in front of customers so that they could see it, feel it, maybe not use it in real life, but they needed to understand the value prop. They needed to be able to be kind of tangible with that. So we were able to build up essentially a fake app and walk them through the sequence of how it would be used. And the parts that we couldn't really prototype were how actual ASR and NLU would work. So, actually seeing the words transform on the screen and being able to take that and turn it into an intent and then be able to get a result back. You couldn't do that in 2 seconds
exactly.
in a prototype. But what we did is we showed them Siri, we showed them Alexa, and we then compared that to enterprise. What if you could, instead of asking about the weather, if you could ask about sales for customers in this region over this time period and get back a result? And they started to kind of connect the dots on that and gave us confidence that we could go ahead with the investment into building it,
right,
which we did. And then those customers that helped us with the prototyping process ended up being our first real legit customers.
Yeah, because they're bought in at that point.
They were bought in.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I guess it's not only a development and cost and time saver, but also a tool for.
So in effect, prototyping became our first model demo.
Neat. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. This podcast is brought to you by Designly, South Carolina's top-rated app development company, and Word of Web, your partner in smarter website strategy and design. All right, welcome back. We're here to continue the conversation with Scott. All right, let's jump back in here, Scott. I thought we might shift gears a bit and talk about Next. I know we were joking before this that you have the unique perspective of kind of the meta-analysis, so to speak, of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Greenville and the state. So to start us off, tell me a bit about what you've seen change in the entrepreneurial scene in Greenville and the state more broadly over your time with Next.
Yeah, wow. So long time. Thinking back to 2006 when there really wasn't a connector for founders and entrepreneurs to know each other, right? It was just sort of happenstance, which is why Next got started. From there to today, we have built a substantial infrastructure to support entrepreneurs and founders. We have an executive director that we just spent about 6 or 8 months finding, Eric Weissman, who's been on board now for about a year. Our 2 big partners today are the Chamber of Commerce and the City of Greenville, and then the county is in there as well. And of course, their interest in supporting an ESO, an entrepreneurial support organization, is about job growth and about trying to bring more people to Greenville with higher paying jobs. And that's, that is beginning to have success, right? If I look at the community of startups and the community of founders compared to what it was 10 years ago, we're light years ahead of that. We're not where we want to be. In fact, we're constantly talking about this idea of 3X next, right? What we have today, how do we triple it over the next couple of years? And so we've got some strategies and plans in place to do that. A lot of that comes back to the various mentors and mentees and the relationships that we've been able to curate and cultivate. I mentioned that I'd spent some time with Designly on that, and worked with Boyd Cycling on that, and that mentor-mentee relationship is an effective way of passing knowledge from one generation of entrepreneur to the next in a more structured way. Some of that can happen, where people find their own mentors, or they, are part of other organizations where they meet people. What we've tried to do with our venture mentoring service, which is a product that comes out of MIT, is to create a structured way of connecting entrepreneurs and getting those mentors connected in with the mentee so that they have a rhythm. They have a connecting rhythm so that they meet on a routine basis. They follow a structure. There's homework for the mentee. Right. And the mentors are curated and selected. There's an invitation process. There's an interview process. The same with the mentees. There's an invitation. There's an interview. There's an application. And so we're playing the matchmaker there.
I see.
And our goal is to try to build up the mentor or the mentee, and it's not always a success for that mentee's organization, right? It's about the mentee becoming a capable founder. What they're working on right now as an idea might not work. I've had one of those where we had a really smart young guy, a great idea for an app. And after a couple of years, it was clear, okay, this isn't going to work. So part of the mentoring process was to help him shut that down. And then in others, we've had great success where it's on the growth curve, on the up.
Yeah.
And of course, you want to, have a little bit of both, because if you're not striking out, you're not swinging enough.
Yeah.
But I think that's probably the biggest difference is we have a very solid collection today of founders. We have a solid collection of mentors, and we're able to make those matches where we're seeing some real sparks fly.
So is that the main focus of Next, like those mentorship opportunities and the matchmaking between founders and mentors?
Yeah, multiple programs. So that's one of the programs we run. The other program we run is peer networking. So just having an exchange between founders on a monthly basis. And then we run our big event every year is the Venture Summit, which we rebranded this year to Venture Summit from Venture Pitch. That brings in 300 or so founders and 30 to 40 VCs. And that's been a pitch contest in the past. This coming year, we'll have that reformatted just a little bit so that we're actually highlighting some companies that aren't necessarily pitching, but have been successful, or that just want to be able to get the word out on what they're doing. Yeah. And then we have an educational track along that same front.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you see as the, for lack of a better phrase, the qualification criteria of founders and their businesses when they join Next? Like what qualities do you look for, whether it's in the person or the business, to indicate that, this company might achieve some degree of success?
Great question. So, if you think about what we try to do in the overall mission at Next is we've got this funnel that we're thinking about. At the top of that is the whole ecosystem of every type of business you can imagine that we want to support. Every startup and every founder that you can imagine, Main Street or global, doesn't matter. But we can't really nurture all of those Main Street businesses. Think about that as like a person opening a barbecue joint or a nail salon. They're important to the local economy, but they're not necessarily going to have as high of an impact as another business, right? That's scalable on a global basis, that can grow very quickly. So we look for those companies that have that ability to scale up. We look for founders that have either done that before or have that vision that appears to us that they can achieve a scale up. And then we're looking for things that are going to have a wealth impact locally. It's important to grow jobs here, but it's also important to grow wealth here.
Yeah.
So whether that's local investors or whether that's an entrepreneur that is on their second or third turn that's decided to stay in Greenville. We've also had good success with some folks that are recruited into Greenville that stick around and grow their businesses right here in town. So, those attributes to figure out who's going to be successful, if we were great at that, we would be, VCs. What we're trying to do is create an environment where the conditions are right for that entrepreneur to have success. We can't pick them all, but we can create the conditions, sort of like making the forest really conducive to high growth.
Right. How do you think about fostering diversity in the group of founders as well?
Super important. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Super important. So our goal is to have a diverse founder base. We have done some very proactive reach outs to make sure that our board is composed of people of color and minorities and females. And, it is not as easy as you might think. It's hats off to you and, approaching this world yourself.
Well,
but,
thanks.
It's important to the ecosystem that we're making the doors open and being viewed as being open. There are no wrong doors to come through when you approach Next, right? We may not have the right place for you in Next, but we know the other doors and where to direct somebody, right? The connector, right? Exactly. So you think of Next as a big network,
right?
And there are no closed doors to it. We want to make sure that people do recognize that, whether they're coming in to open a barbecue shop or whether they're coming in with an app idea, it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that you're actively reaching out to all those different populations, I think that's important. That visibility.
Yep, absolutely.
Do you have any like go-to line that you're known for in terms of what you tell entrepreneurs in the next ecosystem? Like, do you have any go-to advice that you always tell founders?
I mean, I think one of those that is a classic is you really don't have a business until you have some revenue.
Yeah.
That's one that's like everybody thinks they've got a great idea and want to talk about how the app looks and they want to talk about this and that. It's like, well, right now you have an idea.
Yeah.
And you may have started a company, but you really don't have a company until you've sold something.
Right.
So go out and sell something and get it in with the customer. And then you'll figure out if you actually have a company.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll probably change a lot after that.
It'll change
first
a lot.
customer, too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, one last question for
Sure.
you here. Across all of your different business endeavors, do you have a single non-negotiable that you always come back to? Like, what is that anchor?
Oh, I mean,
that sustains you?
serve the customer.
Yeah.
Serve thy customer. It's the number one rule.
Yeah.
Just do what's right by the customer, whether it costs you money or whether it makes you money. Do what's right by the customer, and it will serve you well in the long run.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks for listening in today. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks so much.